From the New Arts and Media Studios in Milwaukee, I'm Charles Purcell. This is The Log. I'm going to talk about sex and use some sexual metaphors today. So just a warning, if you're squeamish about such things, there's your trigger warning. I have some final thoughts on last week's trip to the Middle East by the Orange Menace, what that means for us. All right, first I want to pick up where we left off last week. How to effectively resist the regime and its fascist tactics. Support state and local governments. Local and state governments can refuse to cooperate with federal overreach. They can use the powers of their offices to slow down or even, dare I say, sabotage directives and initiatives coming from the federal government. These ridiculous executive orders that we keep repeating over and over again have no force of law. A president doesn't make law. A president can't tell a local or state government what to do. And so we, as activists, as citizens, need to support our local officials, pressure them if we have to. But have you ever tried to get in touch with a local official? It's actually pretty simple, especially compared to trying to get in touch with your representative in Washington. Your local representative, whether on the school board or the city council, or they're just a phone call away. They're just a knock on the door away. Take advantage of that access. Number 2, mass mobilization. I'm very disappointed this week. I don't really have any big marches or rallies to promote. No nationwide events anyway. But now, having said that, I want you to check with your local people because there's always something going on somewhere. So even though I haven't got a big national event to promote, continue to organize, to join protest movements. The larger the better, the more visible the better, but even the small ones, especially if you can get some cameras there, be savvy about your media promotion. Get the local TV station there to bring their cameras. Continue to build those coalitions with your local media, with a diverse array of political groups. Number 3, non-cooperation and civil disobedience. It's vital that you withdraw consent. Every fascist movement is looking to scare you. They want your consent just by threats. So non-cooperation. Continue to work for the strike. We have to have work stoppages. We have to have a general strike. We're nowhere near the number of people we're going to need for that right now. So continue to advocate for that. Remember, generalstrikeus.com. That's where you can sign the pledge, join with other folks, and you got to advocate within your own sphere of influence. We absolutely have to organize for a general strike. We're nowhere near that yet, and I think it's way overdue. We mentioned a couple of these last week. There are insiders who are trying to work against the fascist movement. There are whistleblowers. You have to support them in any way you can. Often that takes the form of legal aid. So find someone you can support, maybe financially if you got $5 to kick into the ACLU or something like that. Each one of us has a role in exposing propaganda. We can all educate each other. That's around the kitchen table kind of stuff. Don't be shy. There are people in your circle who might be falling for some of the lies. Each one of us has the ability and the duty, the civic duty, to spread truth. It's central to the resistance. And a couple final points. Remember, this is going to be probably a long-term fight. We can't just wait for things to blow over. Authoritarians don't work that way. In fact, that's exactly what they want. They want us to grow tired. They want us to just be so victimized by fatigue that apathy sets in. It's like, oh God, that's what they want. That's part of their strategy. So do whatever you need to do to stay in the long-term struggle. And then just to close, and to repeat what I've said, I love symbols. Symbols are not trivial. Put them on your t-shirt, put them on your hat, share memes. Symbols are powerful. Use them loudly and proudly. Symbols, memes are good. All right, so there's that. Now, a couple of headlines since last we spoke. The Supreme Court heard oral arguments on birthright citizenship. We'll talk more about that when the decision comes down. What I can say right now is that, thankfully, I think there's a 0% chance that SCOTUS does anything about birthright citizenship. It's well established both in law and in Supreme Court precedent. Even this court won't reverse that. It might be 9-0, it might be 7-2, but I don't think we have to worry about that. What we have to worry about is what the administration is really after. They're trying to abolish the so-called universal injunction or national injunction. That's where one single judge in a particular jurisdiction can put a hold on one of these executive orders that applies to the whole nation. And of course, the Orange Menace doesn't like that because he writes these ridiculous, bogus, illegal, unconstitutional executive orders. And he's asking the Supreme Court to limit local judges, that they can only stop that executive order in their particular local jurisdiction, which means it would take dozens or hundreds of judges to stop these orders while they go through the appeals process. And it would just become an impossible situation. Now, there is a chance that the Supreme Court could make the wrong decision regarding national injunctions in this case. So we'll find out. Again, we'll talk more about that if and when they do it. But that's what's happening, and that's the real danger. Speaking of the Supreme Court, they made the right decision when they once again denied the use of the Alien Enemies Act in these illegal renditions and kidnappings and so-called deportations. But the problem is, for the second time, they sent it back to the lower court. So the Supreme Court is chickening out, and they're punting once again. On the story of the American Gestapo, the ICE agents, well, I guess there are several headlines. I'll just say I've seen several more of these videos. They're everywhere now, of agents in masks, unmarked cars, harassing people, breaking car windows, dragging them out of their cars. So keep your phones out, videotape this wherever you see it. I think it'll have an impact. But these stories, they continue. It's been reported that 9 migrants have died in ICE custody since the regime took over in January. Yeah, the acting director of ICE testified last Wednesday that in-custody deaths since January 20th stand at 9. There were 12 all of last year, which is still too many. I don't know why people are dying in custody. There's an average of 5 deaths a year. So this is all terrible. I had no idea. Why are people dying in custody? And now, in just a couple of months, 9. Well, it might have something to do with these awful conditions at ICE detention centers. We're finding out through investigative reporting, overcapacity, shortage of beds, detainees have to sleep on the floor, just overcrowding everywhere, insufficient restrooms, showers, meals, everything. Everything's just short. They can't sit down, no sort of recreation at all, no sort of, going outside, moving around. And we got these, remember the black sites, so-called black sites around the world? Well, we pretty much have that now, right here in the United States, in the southern belt, Louisiana and other places. Outbreaks of disease, pregnant women, people with medical issues not getting the attention they need, extreme cold, lack of food. Oversight is being denied. Remember, just recently, this delegation of members of Congress denied entry into an ICE detention center in New Jersey when it's their constitutional right and duty as members of Congress to oversee such facilities. But this private facility, contracted through ICE and Homeland Security, denied entry. Yeah, so basically we have black sites, like the post-9/11 so-called war on terror black sites, right here in this country. and 9 people are dead in a couple of months. All right, some events and boycotts. As I told you, nothing big on the national calendar. Please check with your local folks, see what's going on. I can tell you that the Walmart boycott is May 20th through the 26th. So as always, I encourage you to make that permanent, but at least this week we're doing it together, May 20th through the 26th. Boycott Walmart and let everybody know it. Let them know it. A couple of things coming up. June 6th, D-Day anniversary protest. Everybody around the country. Big event in Washington, D.C. Every state capitol, city hall, and town hall. Veterans protest to end fascism in the U.S. So, D-Day anniversary protest, June 6th. A week later, on June 14th, of course, is the big military parade in D.C., North Korean style, dictator style military parade. We're going to counter that with protests around the nation. No kings, 50-50.1, indivisible, hands-off movement. Everybody is in on that. So mark your calendar for June 14th. We will make his military parade look very, very small in comparison. All right, moving on. I have some final thoughts on the trip to the Mideast. Well, it was mostly just about his personal corruption, which we've talked about. The dictators know exactly who they're dealing with. As far as all the deals he supposedly made, there were some arms deals. We continue, that's old news. We continue to be the world's greatest arms dealer by double or triple the number 2 nation. The military-industrial complex loves the fact that we run guns to the world. The rest of the so-called deals, all these great investments that he's bragging about, most of them are just memorandums of agreement or some vague promises. Some deals were already been in the works for years. Some may never happen. So it's the same old story. He's bragging about things. Don't buy the hype for a second. But I think the main story coming out of the Middle East trip was we now have what people are calling the Trump doctrine. And what it is, basically, he looks at these other dictators, said, that looks good to me. Whatever. You be you. It's back to the business of America is business. Whatever deals we can make. And mostly, I want to be one of you guys. I want to be one of the handful of potentates, of kings, of dictators. That's the Trump doctrine. Nothing matters anymore. Just power. His own power and whatever he can get out of these guys who are using him as their own useful idiot. So, this compares to other doctrines. We had the Bush doctrine, which was ridiculous. The shine they tried to put on the apple there was, we're spreading democracy. Well, what it really was, they wanted to spread kind of old school neo-imperialism, where we're the big dog. We can extract resources from them. We can sell our crap back to their markets. So yeah, they called it building democracy. They just wanted, that was American neocolonialism, pure and simple. That's the Bush doctrine. The Trump doctrine is democracy, screw it. Do whatever you want. We'll look the other way. Murder journalists, we don't care. Which is the exact opposite of the Carter doctrine, which was centered on human rights. It's like, we'll do business with you. We want to be friends. We want to get along. But sorry, we can't do business if you're going to shit on your own people, if you're going to deny them basic human rights. Now, I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm just going to tell you, if you do that, we're not going to work with you. That's the Carter doctrine. I'm not going to force you to do anything. I'm not going to send in armies to tell you what to do. But, we're not working with you. That was the Carter doctrine. Moral standards. Human rights at the center. Yeah, I hear you, my buddies on the left. There were still incidents. He still had an army. He still had problems. He still had... I know. But that was the big headline, I think, coming out of this and going forward. We now have the Trump doctrine, which is completely amoral. Just do what you do. be dictators and kings and fascists and whatever. Whatever I can get out of you is great. You want to bribe me? Good. Everybody get in line. Bottom line, it's all about him. He wants their bribes because he's consumed by greed. He wants to be one of them because he's consumed by pride. He loves the white marble. He loves all the gold. He loves the idea of having the biggest plane. Got to have that big plane, which is so phallic. And here is why I warned you. I'm going to talk a little bit about sex. Part of what I took from the trip, too, is for the first time, I'm really wondering, is Donald Trump gay? I'm kind of thinking maybe he is. All this, the first thing he said about the Syrian president, Ahmad al-Sharaa, oh, young, attractive guy, tough guy. And he was just fawning over the Saudi crown prince, MBS. Oh, I like him too much. While making this sort of, he did sort of the Homer Simpson drool, Ugh. And then they closed the meeting in Saudi Arabia, the big event where he's drooling all over MBS. They closed that event with YMCA. And there he is up there doing his jerk-off dance, right? Where it looks like he's jerking off two guys. And then he did it again in Qatar from the back seat of his limo. He looks out and he does like the jerk-off mime thing with his hand. What is he doing? It's way too weird. And then it got me thinking of all the other times over the last, 10 years of this guy. We've had to live with him. Remember he used the word schlonged? He was talking about when Obama beat Hillary Clinton. He said she got schlonged. Schlong, of course, is a Yiddish vulgar slang word for penis. And he used it as a verb. He likes to say how he makes up words. This one he did. I think he was the first one to ever turn that into a verb. What kind of a person, what kind of a mind, what kind of an impulse do you have to have within you to even come up with that? And he's so into the WWE and Ultimate Fighting. He talked about Arnold Palmer's penis for like 10, 15 minutes at this gathering. He's so obsessed with, with men. Mad Dog Mattis and Raisin Kane. You know the joke from Airplane where the pilot says, "Do you like gladiator movies, Jimmy?" Or whatever the kid's name is, Bobby. "You like gladiator movies?" That's the Orange Menace. And all these guys. I mean, look at J.D. Vance and the other men around him, the sycophants. How they gaze at him and they grovel. It's just weird. And for the first time ever, I'm thinking it's like sexual. There's this right-wing archetype of like an oily, closeted gay guy. I mean, God, look at Mike Pence. I mean, come on. Lindsey Graham, Mike Johnson is definitely gay. Matt Schlapp, the head of CPAC. And now the Orange Menace. I'm just seeing a pattern here that I can't deny. I mean, we got Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, who is gay openly, and that's great. I mean, that's great. Finally, maybe someday we can just all be open about who we are, right? That would be a nice day when this self-loathing, closeted, right-wing archetype is just gone. But in the meantime, there it is, and it's just sad. I mean, it's really, really sad. And this self-loathing, it's not only sad for them, but it's dangerous, like deadly dangerous for millions of Americans in the LGBTQ community at large. Because this attitude results in cultural rot in certain pockets of the population and these bigoted and draconian laws. not to mention prejudice and discrimination to the point of physical violence and even death. So, yeah, this isn't just a joke. This is serious. Yeah, I'm really getting sick of this oily, self-loathing, right-wing gay archetype. They need to just stop it. And if investigative reporters or historians someday dig up the truth that the Orange Menace is a closeted, self-loathing gay person, I wouldn't be the slightest bit surprised. In fact, I really suspect it. All right, I want to close today with some media criticism. I really want to push against a trend in media. Have you heard the phrase, too clever by half? It's an expression that describes somebody a little overly clever, a little too smart, in a way that's really counterproductive or annoying. Their own cleverness has kind of backfired on them to really make everything worse. They think they're being smart. They think they're being intelligent. They think they're being funny. But they're really doing more harm than good. They're taking us away from the fight. They're distracting us. The people I'm talking about are very anti-Trump. They're anti-fascist. They're anti-regime, so that's good. But I don't like their methods. And I feel a special responsibility myself to talk about this because I keep recommending them. I keep telling you to go to independent media. But places like Politico and Vox and The Intercept, and especially these platforms who really rely on the podcast platform, the YouTube platform, places like Midas Touch, The Bulwark. As I search around and spend some time on these different sites looking for good sources of news and analysis, I'm finding more and more that they're just engaging in mental masturbation. And there's I gave you the trigger warning. There are going to be a couple sexual metaphors. I don't want to bring sex into this. I know that's a sexual metaphor, but I couldn't find a better phrase. I even looked it up. I asked AI. I said, give me a better idiom for mental masturbation, and they couldn't. They gave me a bunch of others, but none of them meant what I was after here. So I had to stick with mental masturbation, even though it's a gross image. But it's when you engage in sort of excessive or indulgent thinking or analysis, and it feels like you're really talking about something, but it's not. It's not really productive. It's overanalyzing, it's fantasizing, it's endlessly discussing the minutia of what's going on without ever offering anything productive, anything useful, any solutions, God forbid they should offer any kind of solutions. It just never gets there. And again, a lot of these are very smart people. They have their Ivy League degrees, and a lot of them are lawyers and political operatives. They've been in campaigns. They've run campaigns. Many of them former office holders. It's not that they're not smart people, but more and more I'm finding that they're just yapping on and on about clickbait, basically. And so that's why I felt a certain responsibility to criticize these folks, because I've been pushing you toward them. I keep telling you to turn away from corporate news, to find other independent sources. But so many of these independent sources and these social media types and these YouTube types are engaging in pointless and even damaging clickbait. And it can become very addictive by design. That's the whole point of social media, is to get you addictive, and they know that. They know what gets clicks. They know if they have a 2-hour conversation that they choose the most outrageous clips to bring you in. And then in the end, it's not analysis that's helping us fight the regime. It's just manipulative talk that draws us in, that makes us more anxious. And every time we see that familiar face of Tim Miller or Scott Galloway or one of these, guys. We just feel compelled. Oh, I got to click on that for fear of missing out. But in the end, it's got no meat on the bone. So I think this is a very dangerous trend in the modern media landscape. So back to the drawing board here. It's so important that if we're going to build and maintain an effective resistance, we need a communications arm to the movement. But I think there are just too many charlatans out there. Maybe they have good intentions. Maybe they don't. It's getting harder and harder to tell. So how do we sift through this, find what we genuinely need, and separate the wheat from the chaff? Well, a couple of ideas. If you find yourself being triggered, angry, emotional, maybe they're pushing buttons that don't need to be pushed. Try to keep in your own head as you're taking in media like this, meaning know what you need, know what you want. Don't let them just take you for a ride. Stay present in your own mind, right? As you take in this kind of media, don't let them just wash you away. And really listen to them. Are they giving you real information? Are they giving you anything actionable? Are they presenting any tangible goals that we might achieve? Are they suggesting anything that we might do, either individually or together, to make whatever situation they're talking about better? To fight the regime, to fight fascism? Are they relating this to the real world, to your actual life, to any meaningful activities that you might engage in? Anything that adds real value? We really do need information. We need news and analysis. We need it. It's not trivial. And most of us have rightfully criticized old school legacy corporate media. For all the right reasons, we said, no, you're not doing the job for us. But the alternatives, many of them are so disappointing. So once again, as somebody who's pushed you into their arms, I feel the responsibility to warn you about what I'm seeing. It's not good. All right. Well, that'll do it for today. This episode is out there in podcast land. Or go to the website, charlespurcell.com. Thanks to our flagship terrestrial station, River West Radio. Remember, go to Blue Sky, Charles Purcell, and Substack. That's where we can be found. Write to me, Charles Purcell at Gmail. Theme music by Peter Donalds. There it is. I love you. I'll see you out there.